All right, buckle up for another deep dive. This time we've got a real head-scratcher. A legendary samurai sword vanishes, we hear whispers of the Yakuza, and there's international intrigue. It's like stepping right into a spy movie.
What grabs you right away is the object itself, the Hanji Masamune. This isn't just any sword, it's considered a Japanese national treasure. We're talking over 700 years of history.
Okay, so picture the crown jewels, but with a much sharper edge, right? Then poof, it's gone. No wonder we have a mystery.
Exactly. And its disappearance is huge, historically and culturally. But to understand how we got here, let's rewind to post-World War II Japan. The U.S. occupation forces, they're collecting swords, part of a disarmament program.
From what I'm seeing in the Axel files, these detectives' notes, the Hanji Masamune should have been among those surrendered.
Right, and records show it was taken to a police station. Then signed over to a Sergeant J.C. Eagle, supposed to transport it to an armory. Poof, the trail goes cold, Sergeant Eagle disappears, and the sword with him.
So did he go rogue? Or is there something more to it?
That's where Leon LaRue comes in, the podcaster we mentioned. The Hanji Masamune was his obsession. He had a whole podcast dedicated to finding the truth about its disappearance.
And it seems like he might have gotten too close to something dangerous.
LaRue, he found inconsistencies in the records, suggesting there might be more to Sergeant Eagle's story. But before he could reveal anything, he was murdered.
His daughter, Lana, she believes his death was connected to his investigation. She reached out to Axel Webb, he's a private investigator based in Toronto, hoping he could finish what her father started.
And Axel, with his talent for finding lost treasures and his quick wit, gets pulled into this whole web of intrigue.
The case files, they detail his trip to Japan, and he meets a cast of characters as varied as the clues he's chasing.
One of the first is Haru Hashimoto, a Japanese intelligence agent and a bit of a foodie, it seems. He has a thing for horse meat, apparently.
Okay, that's a detail I did not see coming.
Yeah, Haru, he's got his own reasons for wanting to find the Hanji Masamune, and his path crosses with Axel's in some unexpected ways.
And then there's Hibiki Sato. The files describe him as a Yakuza boss, someone who operates in the shadows. His grunts apparently speak volumes.
Ah, yes, Hibiki.
And to round out this interesting group, we have Jimmy Kowalski, a businessman from Buffalo. He's got a family legacy tied to Japanese swords.
Kowalski's connection, though, it seems to run deeper than just being a collector. The files suggest he might have some shady associates, maybe even ties to the Yakuza.
Now, speaking of the Yakuza, Japan's organized crime syndicates are a big part of the country's history, right?
Oh, absolutely. And they have this complex social structure.
Yeah, the files talk about their hierarchy, the Oyobun at the top like a patriarch, then the Kyuadai, the elder brothers, and the Shate, the younger brothers.
It's a rigid structure, but there are subtle power dynamics at play, something Axel has to be very careful about.
And their code of honor. It's fascinating. They have rituals, traditions, even a specific way of grunting called aizuchi. It shows agreement, disapproval, even satisfaction.
More than just sounds, the aizuchi. It's a whole intricate form of nonverbal communication. Really important to understand how the Yakuza interact.
All right, so let's recap. We've got a missing sword, a murdered podcaster, a private investigator, a Japanese intelligence agent with some unique tastes, a shadowy Yakuza boss, and a businessman with some potentially dangerous connections. What could make this even more complicated?
Well, how about some political turmoil brewing in Japan? The ruling party is facing a scandal because of its ties to the Unification Church, which is controversial.
And I'm guessing that's where the Neo-Noir comes in, this right-wing party that's gaining traction.
Exactly. They see the Hanji Masamune as a symbol of national pride, strength, a powerful tool to rally support for their cause. They believe that getting the sword back will boost their image and help them politically.
So the search for the Hanji Masamune, it's not just about a lost artifact. It's got political power plays, personal vendettas, maybe even national identity wrapped up in it.
It seems everyone involved, they've got their own secrets, their own motives. It's this tangled web that Axel needs to untangle.
One of the first big things that happens in Axel's investigation, it takes him to this secret Yakuza jazz club. It's called the Kurabu Zuto Sutsu.
And get this, the club has a strict zoot suit dress code.
That is not what I picture when I thought about Yakuza hangouts. What was Axel doing there?
He was following a lead, hoping to get some info about Kowalski and his Yakuza ties. The club is a neutral ground, different factions can interact, so it's a good place to gather intel.
Sounds like something straight out of a movie. But things take a darker turn when Axel learns about a plan to target Hokama. He's the leader of the Mayo Arudume.
This plan, it was orchestrated by Toma, Hibiki's right-hand man, and they were going to use Hokama's peanut allergy.
Wait, they were going to use a food allergy as a weapon. That's risky and kind of terrifying.
Toma, he's known for his planning, ruthless efficiency. They replaced the vegetable oil in Hokama's favorite tempura restaurants with peanut oil. The goal was to trigger a life-threatening allergic reaction.
And did it work?
It did, but not as deadly as they planned. Hokama, he went into anaphylactic shock. But his bodyguard was prepared and used an EpiPen, so he survived.
Wow, that was a close one. So Hakama survived, but I'm guessing this took him out of the political game.
It definitely served as a warning, weakened his position within the Mayo-Arudume.
The files also mention this intense car chase on the Queen Elizabeth Highway. It involved Kowalski and his men, and they were escaping with a bunch of stolen Tokugawa swords. I'm assuming the Hanju Masamune was among them.
Axel, along with Hitoko, he's Axel's Yakuza associate, and Haru, they were in hot pursuit. The chase ended abruptly when Toma detonated one of the tires on Kowalski's car remotely. It caused a fatal crash.
They stopped Kowalski, but it came at a huge cost.
A Pyrrhic victory, you could say. Kowalski and his men are dead, but the swords, including the Hanju Masamune, they disappeared in all the chaos.
This deep dive is already packed with intrigue. We've covered the history of the Hanji Masamune, the Yakuza hierarchy, a daring peanut oil plot, a high-stakes car chase. Where do we go from here?
Next, we dig deeper into the political maneuvering around the sword's disappearance, and we'll explore what happened after Kowalski's death.
Back again for more of the Hanji Masamune mystery. Last time, we ended with a crazy car chase, a fatal crash, and that legendary sword is still missing. It's like a treasure hunt that went very wrong, each clue leading to more questions.
That escalation you mentioned, that's spot on. Things got even more serious after that highway incident for everyone. Remember, those swords Kowalski stole, the Hanji Masamune included, they weren't just valuable, they had deep symbolic meaning.
Right, and we've seen how different players in this game see those symbols in different ways. We have Axel, driven by finding the truth, solving the case, and Haru, the Japanese intelligence agent, his motives seem more about national security.
And we can't forget Hibiki Sato and the Yakuza. Their interest in the Hanji Masamune, it probably goes beyond money. For them, it could mean power, influence in the criminal world, maybe even leverage against the government.
The files mention a tense meeting between Axel, Haru, and Hibiki right after Kowalski's death.
It shows this uneasy alliance they form. Each one has their own goal, but they know they need to work together to get what they want. Classic enemy of my enemy situation.
Speaking of enemies, what about the Mayo-Arudume? They didn't just disappear after the peanut oil thing, did they?
Not exactly. That attack on Hokama, it weakened his power within the party, even though he didn't die. Remember, the Mayo-Arudume, they're all about traditional Japanese values, reclaiming lost national pride. The Hanju Masamune, for them, it embodies all that. It's a powerful symbol.
So even though Hokama's kind of out of the picture, they're probably even more obsessed with the sword now.
Exactly. Their whole ideology pushes them to see getting that sword back as key to achieving their political goals.
And the files also talk about the Unification Church and those controversial ties to the ruling party. How did that play into all this?
That scandal, all that church influence, it created a really volatile political climate. Media frenzy, public trust in the government going down, and the Mayo-Arudume, they saw a chance to take advantage.
So they're trying to make themselves look like the better option, taking advantage of the ruling party's problems.
Right. They painted themselves as the defenders of traditional Japanese values, not tainted by outside influence. And that appealed to some people who were fed up with the current government.
Adding even more complexity to the Hanjo Masamune mystery.
It does. It's more than a missing artifact. It's a powerful symbol, and all these factions want to use it for their own ends.
So how did Axel, Haru, and Hibiki deal with this political mess while they were looking for the sword?
Their first plan, they leaked info about the ruling party's ties to the Unification Church, trying to make them look bad and maybe force a change in leadership.
Seems risky. Things were already tense. Did it work?
It backfired, big time. The leak just made the media frenzy worse, caused chaos in the government, cabinet members resigning, replacements being rushed in. It looked like the whole system was about to fall apart.
So their attempt to manipulate things went way off track. What happened then?
They had to change their approach. Hibiki, he really understands how power works in Japan, and he's got those Yakuza connections. He stepped in.
His underworld influence must have been useful at that point.
Hibiki knew they had to stabilize things. even if it meant helping the ruling party indirectly, the same party they were trying to weaken before. He realized that all this instability was just good for the Mayo Arudime. They were waiting to take over in the middle of the chaos.
So what did he do?
He used his network, got information, influenced people behind the scenes. His goal was to study the government and neutralize the Mayo Arudime, make things calm enough so he could focus on getting those stolen swords back.
And this is where Nakamura comes in, right? He's a high-ranking member of the Mayo Arudime. The files say he offered him a deal, something he couldn't refuse.
Yeah, exactly. Hideki went to Nakamura with an offer that appealed to his ambition: lucrative construction contracts, political favors, a way to get out of the whole messy political situation.
Sounds like Hibiki was playing a dangerous game, manipulating both sides.
He was a master at strategy, using the situation to his advantage. He knew Nakamura was ambitious, always looking for an opportunity, and he made him an offer he couldn't turn down.
And did he take it?
He did. He saw a chance to get rich, secure his future, and get away from the Mayo Arudime, who were getting more and more radical.
So they took down the right-wing party from the inside. But what about the swords?
Things take another twist. Remember, Nakamura agreed to return the stolen Tokugawa swords, part of his deal with Hibiki. He gave Haru a package. It looked like all 14 swords were there.
So they finally got the swords back where they belonged.
Seemed like it. But when Hibiki and Shotoko checked the swords, one very important sword was missing.
You don't mean?
Yep, the Hanji Masamune. It wasn't there. Someone had switched the swords, replaced the legendary blade with another Masamune, valuable, but not the same.
This is unbelievable. After all this, the Honchorjan Masamune is still out there. Who could have pulled this off?
That's the question we'll answer in the final part of our deep dive. We'll uncover the mastermind behind this whole intricate plot, and we'll finally reveal the fate of the Hanji Masamune.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been through some twists and turns in this case, haven't we? Treacherous politics, shadowy yakuza, dead ends, double crosses, and still the Hanji Masamune, that legendary sword, it's still out there.
It's a real puzzle, isn't it? Finding out the sword was switched, even after Nakamura did what he promised, it changes everything. Someone was thinking way ahead, planning all this. We haven't seen that level of strategy before.
So if it wasn't Nakamura who pulled the switch, then who was it? These last few pages of the Axel files, they point to something unexpected.
The answer, it's not in the present, it's in the past. Way back in the chaos after World War II. Remember Prince Tokugawa Ieyasu? He was the head of the Tokugawa clan, the one who surrendered those 14 swords to the U.S. forces. The Hanji Masamune was among them.
Yeah, it was the end of an era. Surrendering those swords, it was symbolic, right? Acknowledging the change in power, the end of the samurai.
There's this little detail in the files, seems unimportant at first. It mentions the prince's assistant. He was the one who prepared the swords for surrender. Imagine that, facing the loss of such a treasure. He made a bold move.
He switched the swords back then.
He did. It was his duty, he felt, to protect the Hanji Masamune. He understood its history, its cultural significance. He replaced the real sword with another Masamune, valuable but not irreplaceable.
So he started this whole elaborate plan decades ago. Where did he hide the real Hanjo Masamune?
He went on a secret journey to the Tushuga Shrine at Niku. That shrine is dedicated to Tokugawa Ieyasu, the founder of the Tokugawa shogunate. It's a really important place in Japanese history.
It seems like the perfect hiding place for a national treasure.
He gave the Hanjo Masamune to the K'inich, the Shinto priest who takes care of the shrine. They swore an oath to keep the sword's location a secret. The secret would only be passed down to future K'inich.
That's incredible. Hidden in plain sight all along, protected by Shinto priests for generations. It shows their loyalty, their dedication to protecting their heritage.
It speaks to how powerful symbols are, doesn't it? The Hanji Masamune is more than a weapon. It represents the soul of Japan, its history, its warriors, its culture.
And it took someone who truly understood that to make sure it survived. This assistant, his name's lost to history. But he's the real hero who protected the Hanji Masamune.
Because of what he did, the sword wasn't lost, it wasn't destroyed. He saved it for the future. A remarkable story, courage, and foresight.
But what about Axel? How did he react to all this? What happened to him after he uncovered the truth?
The files, they end pretty suddenly. We know this whole experience really affected him. Imagine uncovering a conspiracy that goes back decades, meeting people from the criminal underworld, the political elite, and then finding out the answer was right there all along.
He must felt like he was caught in a whirlwind, a pawn in a game he didn't understand.
He felt frustrated, for sure. He was manipulated. But he also admired the assistant's dedication to preserving history. And I think he felt relieved that the Hanju Masamune was safe.
This deep dive, it's been a wild ride. We started with a missing sword, and we ended up in a web of intrigue that went from the streets of Tokyo to the highest levels of power.
In the end, it wasn't about solving a crime, was it? It was about understanding history, tradition, and the courage of one man.
This case, it shows the power of symbols and how far people will go to protect what's important to them. It reminds us that the past is always with us, shaping our present, sometimes in ways we could never imagine.
You've given us some amazing sources. I hope this deep dive has helped you understand the Honja Masamune better, why it's so important, and the story behind its disappearance and how it was protected.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep digging into the mysteries around us. Thanks for listening.